Reality.
Therapist perception.
Bachelorette.
Yeah.
Is it time for reactivity TV?
It's time for reactivity TV.
Do you want to explain a little bit about what reactivity TV is about?
Yes. So reactivity TV is our therapist take on reality TV, and our therapist perception gives us a little bit of a unique take on some of the things that happen, some of the dramatic happenings that we so naturally see on things like The Bachelorette or The Bachelor. And there are so many different interesting ways to read into all of what we see happen and unfold through people's communication, through the relationships that develop. And so Amy and I thought that reactivity TV was such a great way to shed that light on things and bring that to other viewers, because we tend to put our therapist hat on when we're watching, can't help it. And so this is what tends to happen.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, as we'll talk about today, like they're in these small moments that we see on TV, on the screen. There are so many opportunities for us to like learn or apply some of our knowledge or the skills that we talk about with the people that we work with. And that's what I really like about reality TV, is that there is an element of reality in that there are humans that are on the screen.
So. Exactly. And however real it is, we are taking the approach that it is real, and everything that we're seeing can happen. And that's important to know.
Yes. Yeah, we need to let ourselves live in that world, in that reality that someone can meet, fall in love, get engaged in 8 weeks with other people trying to date the same person at the same time. So
we're diving into the world.
Yes, we are fully stepping into the world. So I think that part is important for us to both be on the same page about, as we talk about this, that is the world that we're living in. And also, I know that I say this every week, but I just want to be clear that we're really only commenting on what we're seeing portrayed to us. Like, it is an edited show, we know that, so we're just reacting to what is put in front of us, and we're not assessing the cast members themselves, but we're more maybe assessing the situation based on what we're seeing. All right. Well, this was finale part 1.
Yes, finale part 1, which already is just so exciting.
There was so much going on.
So much going on that it went overtime. Let's just point that out.
Yeah, Jesse did let us know that.
Yeah.
But there was also not a lot going on. So, but I know that at Revive we have a Bachelor group chat, and the group chat was on fire. And so not a lot happened, a lot happened. And so I'm really eager to hear a moment or two that stuck out for you.
Yeah. Okay. So what my takeaway, or the thing that really stuck out to me the most, was the lack of curiosity that I saw happen last night. And what I mean by that is that in a lot of the interactions, a lot of them were Rachel, but some of them were Gabby, where there was just this dead end of a conversation because I didn't see enough openness happening from either one of them. And the reason that this stuck out to me is because when people are dating, when people are in relationships, if there's not a sense of curiosity, then you are probably going into a conversation already thinking something, already having assumptions, already having judgments, and that doesn't lend itself for a two-way communication of any kind of mutual interaction. You're already closing yourself off to so much. So, and this happens all the time. And then it creates some criticism, and then it creates some resentment, and it just builds and builds and builds and builds. Mm-hmm. So I emphasize curiosity a lot with clients in general, but when in working with couples too, because it really is what can allow a deeper connection and a way for two people to listen to each other. And so an example that I saw of that last night was with, at first it was with Rachel and Zach, and when he was telling her what he had, that he had some feelings like she was being inauthentic, and she didn't ask him about it at all. It really was kind of a dead end. And that left me confused because I thought that she might want to know, like, how did you get to that point? How did you begin to question my character, instead of just saying, oh, you question my character, okay, bye, we're done. And without that lane of curiosity, it was dead. There was nowhere else for her to go from there. And the same thing happened with Aben, where he so clearly explained himself and explained that he may have said that he was ready for an engagement, and then he came back on it and was thinking like, oh, maybe there's more to it. I clearly want to be with this woman, but I don't know if I'm ready to get engaged. And so he clearly explained that that was his thought process. And then she was just landed at like, you're not ready for engagement, and not getting curious as to what happened. You said this, and then now you're feeling this. Can you tell me what other things came to mind since we talked last? What other things are factors into you feeling that way? She was just so taken aback that he wasn't ready for an engagement that it was over.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you're describing too is that difference between listening to understand and listening to respond.
Exactly.
And I think Rachel, or it looked like Rachel, when she got maybe flooded with disappointment, or maybe was feeling defensive by what Zach said, that like put the guard up to be defensive, to kind of shut that part of the conversation down. And it also looked like what happened then is that she made a lot of assumptions because she wasn't curious. I didn't really understand the connection between basically Zach saying, like, it was in what you were saying or how you were showing up was inconsistent with how I know you. And she took that to mean a judgment of her character. I don't know how she made that leap.
Right.
And again, it sounds like in her more emotional mind, her emotional reaction, she again went to that assumption and yeah, wasn't really open. And same thing with Aben. And then she began to not really be curious about him, but more, you could watch her kind of spiral in, what do you think my family's going to think about me? Or like, how do you think this makes me look? And that became more of her focus, rather than trying to understand what was happening between them.
Yes. Well, and then that definitely makes me think of then what happened with Gabby and Eric. And instead of, again, same kind of scenario as what happened with Aben, where he's not ready for an engagement, but he really wants to be with her, that Gabby went again to the place of, is it me? Is there something wrong with me? And not what's going on with us. And yeah, you're totally right that blockade is just something that comes from within, and something that if you're just so focused on maybe something brought you back to another time where like reminded you of something, you're escaping from the relationship itself.
Yeah. Well, you're also bringing, this curiosity piece is such a good point, because like so much with our emotions are information. And it does, not only were Rachel and Gabby in these instances not curious with their partner, but they also weren't really curious with themselves about what is going on? Why am I having this reaction? And if they maybe had taken a moment to like acknowledge like, oh, I'm heating up over here, it might have helped the interaction be a little bit more productive, so that they could understand and own what was theirs, maybe, and in order to engage a little bit more mindfully and curiously and openly.
Right. And it's not about abandoning the way that you're feeling or the way you're reacting to somebody telling you something that clearly affects you, but there's more to it. Ooh.
Yeah, that was a lot to watch. It was hard to watch, actually.
It was.
I this isn't quite my moment, but I did the engagement piece was such a focus, and I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my memory isn't recalling that the engagement it has been such a focus ever before, like in this season. Where
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
I was like, since when is it not okay for them to just end this and be together? I thought that was some huge change that happened years ago, seasons ago, where they decided it's okay to not be at that marriage point.
Right. Well, I actually, as an aside, I was listening to a Bachelor podcast this morning, and a recap podcast, and they were saying that while that's true on the Bachelor end, that they've parted ways, they've ended and just dated. On the Bachelorette end, every ending has resulted in an engagement, and there is a power dynamic. I think that happens because the like society tells us like that the man chooses, and so the Bachelorettes really aren't really in power. So I thought that was like a really interesting take.
Wow, I hadn't thought about it.
But the thing that really, again, this like the pressure around the engagement just resonated, and also like felt so real in how this shows up in like real life, like non TV life, where oftentimes we see similar reactions around engagement show up when there might feel like there's maybe societal pressure or family pressure, and so much of then the emphasis and the focus just becomes on like achieving this thing, and you lose what the engagement is really meant to be about.
Yeah.
And that seemed to be a lot of the disconnect in these conversations. What between Eric and Gabby and Aiden and Rachel is that they were telling them like, no, I'm committed to you. I see a future with you. And in a lot of ways, that's what an engagement symbolizes, right? But because like the engagement wasn't being achieved, it felt like all was lost. And so I thought that just felt so real, and so much of what happens. And similarly, like a lot of times couples like might get engaged because it feels like it's just the next thing that we do. We've been dating for a long time, we've moved in, check, engaged, and not really coming together to really think about the engagement. And I think the thing that is hard to admit is that an engagement is it's equal parts practical and romantic.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't sound like they're having those practical conversations, that the romanticism of the engagement is kind of coming at the forefront, and it's taking them out of their ability to be a little bit more rational and reasonable about their future, because that's what an engagement is meant to be, right?
Well, and I think that, and you might have better recall on this than I do, because you usually do when we talk about Bachelor things. But there was a season where there were two different ideas of what an engagement meant. One was, you know what I'm talking about. One was, I want to get engaged so that we're committed and that we can figure out our relationship and be together long term. And that there was no, we're getting engaged because that's what you do to plan a wedding and become married. And so I just wonder what way they're operating on this end. It's, are they waiting to get engaged to be engaged? That's what it seems like. Whereas these last two men are thinking like, or not last two men, but the last group, they're thinking, oh, that's how I see engagement, and I'm not ready for that. I'm not ready for marriage. Where they're saying, I'm ready to be engaged, but those things are one and the same.
Right. Well, and I think back to your original point about the lack of curiosity, it doesn't sound like they've, for any of them, have come together.
Cleared up.
To talk about like, this is what I think it means. What do you think it means? Are we on the same page? Like and yeah, it's playing out that they're not, but the curiosity piece is a big one. So my my moment, I guess, that I wanted to talk about was kind of, and we've seen this thread all the way through from hometowns part 1. And it really showed up again last night. The role of family and friend approval of a relationship, and the role that opinions can have, or the impact that they can have in relationships. And I don't know, I really wanted to talk this through. I have some like personal opinions about that, but also some professional ones as well. But it's very clear, like we all have different values around family and the role of family in our lives. And it seems that for Rachel, having parent, family, friend approval and acceptance is like a deal breaker. You need it at all costs. And I can respect that. And I was wondering how Rachel felt watching back the friend portion of Avon's sit down of that part of the date, because they came in kind of hot at Avon, and it wasn't clear that their questions were coming from a place of support or even care. It seemed like they were trying to catch him in a gotcha moment, and it did. Jesse asked Rachel a question, do you feel like your friend sabotaged your relationship? And she said no. But I was really, it was really baffling to me to watch both Avon specifically and Rachel both say, I feel so solid, I feel so secure in this relationship. And then the friend input is like, nope, I'm out. Literally, we're done. And so I just felt like, wow, okay, so friend input is important, but is it the end all be all? And I was just thinking about how when we are working with people who are maybe dating and they will go and tell their friends or family like a lot of details about what's going on in their relationships, that can be helpful until it's not. And I don't know, I guess I was wanting to talk through with you, like, what do you think a good balance looks like? Because it seemed like it was very all or nothing on Rachel's end. And I don't know if you saw it that way.
No, I definitely saw it. And balance wise, I mean, it sounds so therapist of me, but different for everyone. Depends. Nothing's normal. No, it definitely seemed like it was way off balance. And if that's what's going to teeter things too far, then there's something else wrong there. I think anyway. I don't think that somebody could go into be in a relationship and feel like everything's fine, everything's perfect, and then as soon as smack dab, as soon as you hear, oh, I'm done with them. It maybe, but then why? Why is that much more important than this relationship that you've had?
Yeah, well, I guess your point is so valid that like if someone's opinion can change the course of your relationship, then maybe your relationship wasn't as secure, or you weren't feeling as secure in your relationship as maybe you thought. So I guess that point, that dynamic for me really stuck out because it seemed to, like, in a lot of ways undermine the dynamic between Avon and Rachel in a lot of ways. And I also had a lot of empathy for Rachel as well in that situation, though, because she has such a strong foundation of a relationship and trust with her friends, whereas Avon is newer to her. And so it's understandable that she would put a lot of stock into what her friends like would say and what their assessment of the situation was.
Yes.
But it almost felt a little too unbalanced that she took their word as like gospel truth and then entered into that conversation with like her defenses up, and so yeah, it seemed a little off balance to me.
Yeah. And also, I mean, you see that back and forth all the time on those hometowns of, you know, oh, I'm skeptical of this person. Well, let me tell you a little bit more about them that maybe you didn't know. And she didn't really get on the defense there at all, which also is important. So it's both. It's like you need to take their impression and yours. You know him better. Ignoring both, not a great way to go about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I guess a middle ground, as with all things.
Yes. Balance is key.
Is key. Yeah. All right. So next time we'll be talking about finale part 2, where it looks like a lot is going to go down on the Tino Rachel front, which I am really curious about, particularly because we were watching the Bachelorettes react to what they were watching, and I'm very curious about what we're about to see.
Well, I'm glad you have curiosity.
Thanks, I'm working on